Afghanistan was an absolute disaster. Leaving Afghanistan was the right thing to do. It is not the same as South Korea or Germany or Japan. Afghanistan was a failed nation-building project. It was supposed to be get in, get out, stop the terrorists. Today we heard from several military leaders, notably Mark Milley. And they said they warned Joe Biden, if you pull the troops out, Afghanistan will fall to the Taliban. Joe Biden lied. He claimed he had no warning. He didn't know. Yeah, well, we also have leaked information, which came out a while ago, that the president of Afghanistan was begging Joe Biden for air support. So what really happened? Well, right now, I can't tell you. I can say perhaps the top brass of the military is throwing Biden under the bus, blaming him, saying, hey, we warned him. Don't look at us. Many on the left will blame Donald Trump, saying that, well, you know, look, Trump, it was his plan to withdraw. There's a big difference between getting our troops out and abandoning an Air Force base in the middle of the night, letting the Taliban sweep through the country and take over, and then lie about the warnings you received from your top military brass. Will there be accountability? Of course there won't be. Now, forgive me for being frustrated by this, because we got news that Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Scheller is the one who is being sent to prison and isn't, well, okay, I'm sorry, let me slow down, to the brig. Pre-trial court, we'll see where this goes. I believe he will, hopefully he will be, I want to believe Scheller will be released. But isn't this how it goes? The crooked elites, the despots, they break the law, they throw someone else under the bus, and they get away with it. And who's going to prison? The one guy who had the balls to get up, go on social media and say, this is wrong. You know, there's a lot of people, I guess, who served. There's a lot of people who served in Afghanistan, and they're watching what's happening, and they're just all the work they did to end, you know, this terror state for nothing. Now, Afghanistan's a bit out of the news in this regard, but you know, to see that this guy, Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Scheller, is the one who is being taken to military prison at military base camp Lejeune, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, in North Carolina. You know, it makes me want to punch the monitor in front of me, because, you know, we see this kind of stuff all the time. And I'm sure all of our good Democratic Socialist friends feel the exact same way when you see some fat cat corporation decimate the environment. And then what happens? Slap on the wrist. There's that meme that goes around. If the penalty for a crime is a fine, it's only illegal for the poor. And it's true. Joe Biden, in my opinion, was criminally negligent with what happened in Afghanistan. Now, at a certain point, you know, I'm looking at this, and I want to give Joe Biden the benefit of the doubt, and talking about what went down with Afghanistan, the troops, the loss of life. And then you learn about the choices they made, the advice they defied. Now, hold on there a minute. You know, you may be saying, what, Tim, you wanted to keep troops in Afghanistan? No, absolutely not. But I would prefer it if Joe Biden didn't lie. Perhaps Joe Biden could have come out, anyone in his administration could have come out and said, look, we are being warned that if we pull these troops out, the Taliban will take over. I don't know how we tell the people of Afghanistan to be responsible for themselves, other than you must defend your way of life. Perhaps Joe Biden could have been honest with the American people. Instead, we get to sit back and watch as the regular folk, the working individuals, not the elites, they're the people who are getting thrown under the bus. Now, I will say, to be fair, the military is definitely throwing Biden under the bus, sure, because maybe they're expecting a 25th Amendment and Kamala Harris becomes president. But here's the news from Axios. The top military leaders confirmed media reports that they recommended the U.S. keep 2,500 troops in Afghanistan, and that they believed withdrawing those forces would lead to the collapse of the Afghan military. Biden denied last month that his top military advisors wanted troops to remain in Afghanistan, telling ABC's George Stephanopoulos, no one said that to me that I can recall. Hey, you know what? Maybe Joe Biden was telling the truth. He couldn't recall it because our president is an old sack of potatoes. Joint Chiefs of Staff Mark Milley, who I am no fan of, and the head of U.S. Central Command, General Frank McKenzie, declined to discuss specific conversations with Biden, but told Congress it was their personal opinion that the U.S. keep 2,500 troops in Afghanistan. Milley stressed in his testimony, I am required, and the military commanders are required to give our best military advice, but the decision makers are not required to follow that advice. The Pentagon's top leaders have come under intense scrutiny over the series of disasters that followed the U.S. exit. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, Milley, and McKenzie are testifying before Congress for the first time since the withdrawal. They say highlights on the Kadak evacuation. Austin said in his opening statement that military leaders began planning for a non-combatant evacuation of Kabul as early as the spring, and that this is the only reason U.S. troops were able to start the operation so quickly when the Taliban captured the city. Was it perfect? Of course not. On abandoning Bagram, Austin told senators that keeping Bagram the center of U.S. operations in Afghanistan for 2 decades would have required an additional 5,000 troops and provided little value for evacuation efforts. Staying at Bagram, even for counter-terror purposes, meant staying at war in Afghanistan, something the president made clear he would not do. Talk about lies. They turned the lights off in the middle of the night. They didn't tell the Afghan military. And looters came. An empty military base wouldn't have provided anything. Are you kidding? You were flying people out of the country. Well, we would have needed to stay at war. You know, they want it. They want the war. They want us to be punished. They want to say, you want to get out of war, then we're going to make it as painful as possible so you never forget. As much human suffering as they can muster. So that in the future, they'll say, we can't have another Afghanistan. We got to increase the troops in whatever country it is that these individuals, I won't swear, want to invade next. On the collapse of the Afghan security forces, we helped build a state, but we could not forge a nation. Now, that's true. The fact that the Afghan army we and our partners trained simply melted away in many cases without firing a shot took us all by surprise. It would be dishonest to claim otherwise. Yeah. You built a state, you couldn't forge a nation because you need shared stories and cultures to forge a nation, not occupation. And that's what it was. It was a military occupation. The people who grew up there, many of these kids, 18, 20 years old, they don't remember a country outside of American occupation. They have no stories of triumph. They have stories of defeat. And so what do you get? Well, the resistance was the Taliban. Yeah, the theocrats, the fascistic theocracy. They're the ones who are telling great stories of defeating the great empires of the past. They were the ones who were telling the youth, we've defeated the Russians, we've defeated the British, and we will triumph over the Americans. And that was the rallying cry. They couldn't forge a nation. But let's be real. Melting away of the Afghan security forces was because the U.S. pulled critical infrastructure. Many of these brave men and women in Afghanistan did fight. There is a video of Afghan commandos running out of ammo and then being summarily executed by the Taliban while they surrender. That's what the Taliban is. That's why they're bad, because they execute those who surrender. They don't take prisoners. They're theocratic. They are dogmatic, authoritarian, and for all those reasons. That is no excuse for the U.S. There's no reason to be over there. But certainly I believe the withdrawal could have happened. It could have happened on time, and it could have happened in a way that didn't result in the collapse of the state. Because, sure, we could have pulled out our military, but we could have kept in logistics. We could have told them, you need to come and secure Bagram Air Force Base. The U.S. didn't do that. Donald Trump wanted to get us out. I respect it. I do. But to pretend that this was Trump's plan when Trump isn't even in office, to ignore the fact that military advice was ignored, albeit I'm not a fan of the advice they're giving. Maybe it's true. Joe Biden lied, defied that, and I think he just wanted to burn it to the ground. He wanted the Taliban to come in. Why? It's perfect. Now in 10 years, when the Taliban, with all of our weapons, starts fighting with Pakistan or whatever, we got to send in more troops. It'll be like ISIS all over again. They say on the Trump-Taliban peace deal, Milley and McKenzie both testified they believe the Doha agreement negatively affected the morale of Afghan soldiers, as well as their ability to conduct operations. On Russian bases in Central Asia, Austin denied the U.S. has asked Vladimir Putin for permission to use Russian military bases to launch counterterrorism operations against targets in Afghanistan, but confirmed that Milley was seeking clarification on an offer from Putin concerning the issue. They're going to say the Pentagon's top leaders have come under intense scrutiny. This we understand. Well, let's talk about the one guy. He's not the only one, but one guy at least willing to stand up and demand accountability, and they're locking him up. The Daily Mail reports a U.S. Marine who was relieved of his duties and later resigned after he publicly criticized the U.S. chaotic pull out of Afghanistan last month is being held in military prison, according to his father. Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Scheller gained notoriety in August when he released a public video ripping into the hasty withdrawal of U.S. troops and personnel from Afghanistan, leaving the country to fall to the Taliban. After several of his videos went viral, his superiors banned him from posting on social media, but the Marine continued to do so before handing in a letter of resignation on on August 31st, the final day of U.S. occupation of Afghanistan. On Monday, his father revealed that the former lieutenant colonel has been sent to military prison known as the Brig, where he is being held as he awaits a military hearing for breaking the gag order set by his superior officers. The Marine Corps later issued a statement confirming Stuart Scheller Sr.'s claims that his son has been imprisoned, awaiting a military hearing, and did not confirm how long he has been held, but insisted he would receive a fair trial. Now speaking exclusively with the Daily Mail, Scheller Sr. discusses his son's plight. Quote, "It's outrageous. Our son is a warrior. He has been a Marine for the past 17 years, highly decorated and perhaps considered in the top 1% of the Marine Corps officers. He could not stand by and could not fathom the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. He was asking for accountability, honest answers, and confessions of mistakes that were made. They have turned their backs on him. They have tried to shut him up with a gag order. And when that didn't work, they have put him in jail. It's shameful." That's what this country has become. The crooked elites, they purge the military, they purge the police. They ignore their responsibility in all of this. And Joe Biden just keeps coasting along as he's always done. One of the most corrupt people this country has ever known. People say that we are in dire straits today, that the country has fallen. I'm sorry, it fell a long time ago. It has just been a slow moral decay. Forgive me for being a bit pessimistic in this segment. I just hearing that this is the guy that they're going to lock up. Hillary Clinton can destroy public records. We can see the destruction of the environment. And whenever that stuff happens, it's always just yeah, we know. It's a big club and you ain't in it. It's the same big club they used to beat you over the head with. That's the George Carlin statement. And so I hear a story about an officer. He makes a video and he says, "Hey, we need accountability. How did this happen? How did these soldiers die?" And they're like, "Lock them up. Shut up or you're going to prison." Meanwhile, Mark Milley comes out and says, "I'm so heavily focused on white rage. That's the leadership we get." You know, I am frustrated by all of this to hear, but maybe I shouldn't be. They say Scheller Sr. went on to tell the Daily Mail the pressure applied to his son by the USMC goes against the military outfit's code by which Marines are expected to abide, and declared the Corps could have handled his case drastically different in a drastically different fashion. The question is the treatment by the administration and military leadership towards our son justified? They didn't like what he has said or what he is asking for, so they locked him up. Pressuring, intimidating, shaming, and imprisoning our son is not justified. The USMC expected him to be honest, intelligent, courageous, and to fight for his fellow service members. That's what he's doing. This is expected of him and his fellow Marine officers and enlisted men, and he was asking for the same from his leaders. But all he has received in the last 30 days for asking for accountability is pressure from the United States Marine Corps leadership. They do not like being held accountable, and therefore they have silenced him and put him in jail. The leadership could have answered Stewart's call for accountability in the first 24 hours versus essentially firing him. They could have met with him to reach common ground and made public statements regarding the Afghanistan exit. I've had Vietnam veterans contact me applauding him for his courage because they want to know, was it all worth it? On Monday, Captain Sam Stevenson, spokesman for Training and Education Command, issued a statement on Scheller's imprisonment. Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Scheller Jr. is currently in pretrial confinement in the regional brig for Marine Corps installations east aboard Marine Corps Base, Camp Lejeune, pending an Article 32 preliminary hearing. The time, date, and location of the proceedings have not been determined. Lieutenant Colonel Scheller will be afforded all due process. The hearing is expected to take place on Thursday. Meanwhile, Scheller Sr. told the Daily Mail that he's extremely proud of his son for standing up for what he believes in and questioned the stance of detractors who believed his son should have simply followed orders. What, the gag order? That's very different. And perhaps you could argue he had reason to state that it was an illegal order. I know, I can already hear all of the people who actually know the the Military Justice Code, USMJC, what is it called? I don't know. But they're already saying, no, if you're told not to speak, you don't speak. He shouldn't have been speaking up. I've seen the comments already, and I'm like, when you have a president lying to the American people, when you have top brass denying responsibility and lying to the American people, Do you just sit there and follow orders? Lawful does not mean right. What Scheller did was right. Speaking up and saying, what is this? Was the right thing to do. But you know what? We become a nation of just following orders. Good cops, well, they're resigning in larger and larger numbers. Most of them, I'd say all the good cops quit right away. When the riots were out of control, they were like, I'm out. I'm not dealing with this. With the vaccine mandates, I'm not going to enforce them out. Now what's left is the NPCs, the just following order crowd. That's why they're making an example of this guy. They do not want anyone to defy their orders, no matter how wrong, corrupt, crooked, or even illegal. They need you to just blindly follow the orders. And hey, here's the best part. When it comes down to it, it's your fault. That's how it'll work. All of these people, all of these cops who think they can go around shutting down small businesses, the National Guard servicemen and women who think that they can come in and lock down neighborhoods because they're just following orders and they're lawful. Do you think that in the end of all of this, regular people will say, oh, I don't blame them. They were given orders and they were told they were lawful? Or do you think people are going to say, you sold us out. You condemned us to tyranny. Now we hold you accountable. If anybody who's in the military who goes along with corrupt plans because they're told that they're lawful is going to find accountability at some point. And that could be administrative for sure, or hopefully not. It could be in total chaos. I hope that's not what happens. But you look at what's happening with the states and these two distinct cultures that we have in this country, and it really feels like we are headed towards some kind of collapse. And I'll tell you this, Mark Milley, he better hope and pray that it doesn't come to that, because, you know, he's the woke general. He betrayed this country, contacting China. That's the other thing too. This guy, Mark Milley, he defends his call with China, his secret China calls, insists he wasn't trying to undermine Trump. He didn't tell Trump about it. He says, you know, I knew Trump didn't want to attack China, so I reached out to them and yep. Mark Milley called China and told them, don't worry, we won't attack you. At a time when we're trying to posture and say, if you press in the South China Sea, we will press back. He said, nah, yeah, don't worry about it. We won't attack you. So what did China do? Started sending boats near, they've been sending boats near Hawaii, sending boats near Alaska, saying, hey, it's all international waters. We can do what we want. That's what happens when the chairman of the Joint Chiefs calls China and says, don't worry, we're not attacking you, and we'll give you notice if we do. That's carte blanche to China. That's Mark Milley. Honestly, I don't think anyone will be held accountable. Let's be real. You know, Joe Biden lies. Democrats defend him. They don't care. Media defends him. They don't care. They say, we're telling the truth. You're the liar. And it's mind-blowing to me that I can read Axios. Axios will say, Joe Biden lies. And then I can say Joe Biden lies, and they'll say Tim Pool's lying for accusing Joe Biden of lying. It's amazing. It's almost like these Democrats don't actually watch the news. They watch smackdown videos from leftist personalities who hate the right. So their opinions are based on people just saying the right is wrong, even if the right is right. That's what they do. You know, here's a question. Comment below, let me know. What are some high-level philosophical and political leftist podcasts? Yeah, having a hard time. There's a lot that are opposed to the leftists and the woke cult. There's tons. Joe Rogan may be economically left, but he's certainly at odds with all of this. And then you go down the line and the top podcasts like Ben Shapiro and Turning Point. Where is the rational conversation from the left? Oh, sure, there's several personalities I could name right now. They make snark content. Kyle Kalinski's all right, I guess. Crystal Ball is pretty good. You look at some of the most prominent YouTubers and podcasters and streamers, and it's all just snark content, making fun of other people. One channel, all they seem to do is just make fun of people they don't like. Seemingly people who aren't even on the right. That's where we're at in this country. So you can get someone like Mark Milley, who can call China and give them advance warning. No accountability. You can get a guy who posts a video saying, I want accountability for the top brass that botched everything. And what do we get? He goes to prison. Mark Milley admits in this testimony that he did warn China, or he did tell them, don't worry, we're not going to attack you. And if we do, you'll get advanced notice, undermining everything the U.S. military operations were trying to accomplish, leaving us with the only option to actually attack China, almost like he wanted it to happen. Because think about it. China says, oh, they're not going to attack us. Then we'll keep pressing, and we'll press further. We'll press harder than they have been. So what do? Milley issues a warning saying, hey, we're going to attack you. But then what? We've already given them the Pacific. They've already realized that everything they're doing will result in no retaliation, and he admits it. He will not be held accountable. Joe Biden will not be held accountable. It's Scheller who gets to go to prison for all this. This is what leaves me extremely pessimistic about, what's going on in this country. Where's the accountability? Sometimes, rarely, but this is the way it goes. Everybody knows that the elites get away with it, and they throw someone under the bus. Even with the Durham report, they're going after that one lawyer guy. The one lawyer guy no one cares about. They're not going to go after anybody of real power. They won't do it. And so the crooked get crooked, the crooked win, and we get to sit back and watch. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.